The mission field has come to the cities of America. And unless we do something about the city, we are neglecting a vast mission field. Can we do a church in the city that is urban resistant, that thrives in the city, that revitalizes old congregations, that restores buildings, do church in the city a different way? There's an enormous amount of churches in the city that have pretty much the same story. Churches that in the 40s and 50s were vibrant, thriving congregations found themselves in larger auditoriums with real small congregations and an inability to know how to turn things around and reach the neighborhood around them. And that's exactly where New Life comes into the picture. I came to the city at the age of 17 thinking I'm not here to stay just to go to school, and found myself on the southwest side of Chicago in a little church that needed to be rebirthed. Having agreed to help them out, I saw for the first time the plight of urban churches. And that little church that some people had already given up on, a team of people started coming together, and God has grown what is now New Life Community Church, and we saw what we would come later on to view as our first restart. The church grew, we started to multiply throughout the city of Chicago. Then one day, out of the blue, I got a phone call. On the other line, a fella said, "Hi, my name is Chuck."
I came here in 1946 as a teenager. I was married here and my children were born here. The church became my life, the life of our family.
He told me about how great that church had been at one time and how many people were in the Sunday school classes and how many people they were reaching for Christ and how many missionaries they had sent out. And then he lowered his voice and he looked down and he said, "But Mark, we've hit on hard times."
We had the funds, but we were not able to discern the times.
They had wrestled to try to reach the community, but were really struggling and just felt like, we don't know how to do this. We want to, we desire to, but we can't.
We prayed as a board and felt led to call and talk to a man by the name of Mark Jobe. Not knowing much about him, knowing he was young and we were old. The board, after interviews and meeting with him, felt led to talk to the congregation about merging.
And I was about as nervous as Chuck was.
We were fearful, not knowing what would a merge bring, that they would sell our building, take the money and go elsewhere, or whether we lose our name, identity, our history.
We don't erase the history of a church that we work with. I consider the history of Galilee my history.
We wanted to see what God had begun 105 years ago to be continued, and we had a unanimous vote.
And we've been at it for a few years now, and that place now has 3 services, close to 500 people attend on Sunday morning. The Sunday school is booming with people. There are people coming to Christ on a regular basis.
The scary thing was natural, but none of that happened. They didn't sell the building, they enhanced it much over. We reached out into the neighborhood. The change of name was not a problem.
We don't come in as a church that's 7 years old in this location. We come in a church that's 107 years old, that owns all the history of Galilee, all the witness, all the testimony. That's ours together. And we share that.
My name is Chuck McWhirter, and this is my church.
I'm Elisa Munoz, and this is my church.
It kind of struck us, maybe instead of planting new churches, what about if we help relaunch, restart, revive existing congregations? The more we started dialoguing and working through this, the more we realized this could be a win-win situation.
Been attending this church for 57 years.
I attended here as a little girl with my mom.
My family's had a business in Melrose Park about 40 years.
I was saved a year after the church was built.
All my life has been spent in this church.
2.5 years ago is when I first started here in New Life.
I think the first part of the vision of a restart is coming in understanding that this is not really a new work. This is building upon something that has been in the community for years, typically a church that's been built on the prayers and faith of seniors that have been there for many, many, many years.
I can remember as a little girl, my mother saving and skimping so she can give toward the building program in this church.
Our first agenda was to build relationship with people. We wanted to get to know some of the older folks that have been here and built the church with their bare hands, many of them.
I have poured all the concrete foundation in the floors and the basements.
We wanted to honor their history and not shut down the church, but let them know that we're building on something that's strong and that we honor what they've done in the past.
You get set in your ways to a certain extent. You attend the same church for 50 years.
As we progressed, the adjustments had to come. There was changes that needed to be made. There was a lot of demand upon people because we had a lot of new people coming to know the Lord.
I was a retired fire department chaplain, which I currently am. And I felt a need to step up my service to New Life Church and to our community.
Most of the people who were here at the church prior to New Life coming in have stayed and have been able to navigate through the changes. And they find themselves now, if you were to ask them, that they are busy and more involved in ministry than they ever have been.
They unanimously decided that they would like to ordain me.
When we became New Life, it just seemed like there was just a spark in the air.
We livened up our service with our worship music.
We were careful to make sure that we still blended in some of the traditional songs.
We started reaching the neighborhood with a service that the community was in tune to.
We were able to have a tasteful fit.
Today we have 3 services of 300 people instead of 1 service of 70 people.
It was very good because we got a young group started, and then they're the future church.
Sometimes my wife will elbow me and say, "Wow, we're loud." And I say to my wife, "Look around here, we're packed." Before, we were thinking about our numbers dwindling, and now we're thinking about we need a new building. My name is Joe Kovarik. This is my church.
I'm John DeLong, and this is my church.
I am Tom Biskin.
My name is David Yee.
Paula Kovarik.
I'm Laura DeLong,
And this is my church.
My name is Agnes Wilson. This is my church.
My name is Marty Ozinga, and this is my church.
God has been at work in that neighborhood long before we came on the scene. God has been working sometimes 100 years before we ever got there. And it's our heart to say, can we cooperate with what God is already doing?
What we needed was people. How do you get people if you haven't got a preacher?
I came as an associate pastor with no salary and 0 benefits.
We can close the church, sell all our assets, and give to missions. The only problem with that idea is what you're really doing is you're abandoning the mission field that God has given you right in your own community.
Our goal is to come in, see their history, see the history of the church that's been there, the light that's been shining in that location, and keep that going.
If Chicago is going to be reached, it's got to happen through every life-giving church.
We are trying to be what the church is called to be, a place where people are encountering God, they're trusting Jesus Christ as their Savior, and they're learning to follow His Word.
We have young people. We have babies being born into the church.
The people that had been here for a long time, it was clear that they were excited about change and new young people that were coming in and kids and older people. And we just like to see the mix of a lot of people coming together.
Everybody who has gifts and abilities was invited to use their gifts and abilities in serving, and the majority of the people that stay are somehow involved in ministry.
This may not be right for everyone. We go into every situation very open-handed.
New Life is just offering a spot on a God-sized vision. That you can be part of this vision, that God is doing something great in Chicago.
God has a purpose for every church. To be able to come in as a restart, you're breathing new life into that particular location.
You say new life, yes, new life. Our church is living, and we thank God for that.
And so we celebrate the history, we celebrate the past.
It wasn't about us anymore, but it was about people coming in and coming to know Christ.
We enjoy the present, even though it might be a little bumpy at first.
We decided 6 years ago that we would do whatever it takes to reach the community.
And we're going to look forward to the future.
So our heart is to see places like Chicago transformed by the gospel of Jesus Christ from the inside out. Seeing churches that have existed in a neighborhood for years that have a great history making an impact once again in a vital way in this community.